Hello everyone, welcome to the Pro MMA Betting podcast, first one of 2021, so Happy New Year to everyone. I'm going to try and be more regular with the podcast this year. Post first lockdown last year here in the UK, the podcast just went a little bit bitty for me. There was so much tape to get in every week where the schedule was so condensed, where the UFC was trying to get in there. I think it was about 42 shows I needed to get in for the year, and then you had Bellator came out onto the scene a couple of months later. You had LFA all the time. There was just so much tape to do. It was just a struggle for me to get all the tape in that I needed, do my other bits and pieces I do to bring money in, and do this on top. But I'm currently in a good position tape wise. I kept working over the Christmas period. I took advantage of the month off period that we've had. And I'm about a month ahead at the moment in terms of fights, but the other shows haven't really kicked off yet. Like, there's no Bellator scheduled yet. We have got an LFA this Friday that I have taken a look at, but besides that, the schedule's still quite light. I'm not sure when Bellator's kicking off, but at the minute I'm in a good position. If I could stay a month ahead for the whole year, that'd be great, and it'll mean that I can definitely do a podcast for pretty much every show. So, as always, nothing's changed from last year. We're going to break down the card from bottom to top. Just to remind everyone, this is a betting podcast. It's not a podcast where I'm just going to pick who I think wins. General rule of thumb, I'm going to pick where I feel the value is, and I will explain when I'm making the pick, why I'm making the pick, why I feel there's value, etc., etc. So just bear that in mind. I always get comments saying, oh, why have you picked blah, 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 they're not going to win. Value-based pick. If I don't think someone's going to win 80% of the time, as the odds imply, I'm not going to pick them. It's not always the case. Like I said, it's a general rule of thumb. And again, I will highlight why I'm maybe still picking the favourite, even though I think the line's too wide. But general rule of thumb, I'll go where the value is. So just bear that in mind when you're listening to the predictions. It is a betting-based podcast, guys. Yeah, that's how it's tailored. It's not just me picking who I think is going to win. Last year, I need to still work out the profit for the year. We definitely was in profit for the year. So that will be, I think, 2 years now of me doing these podcasts, and 2 years we've been in profit. I'll do that in the next few days. So next podcast, so we've got 3 shows in a week, basically. I need to do the next podcast. I'll probably do the Wednesday card on Monday. So I'll have that all up to date then. But we was definitely in profit. I don't think it wasn't as good as 2019, admittedly. But profits. And you know, there's going to be up and down periods. As I always say, you've got to treat investing, I like to call this investing, not betting. The way I treat it is more as an investment, is there's going to be peaks and troughs, much like the stock market. In the stock market, you have years that are up, and the stock market's up more than it's down in years. And same on the betting front. Admittedly, I don't ever want to have a losing betting year, because I couldn't think of anything more frustrating than going through a whole year and not earning any money, putting all the time that I do watching tape. And it's never happened to me so far. But obviously some years differ to others in terms of magnitude of profit. And last year wasn't as good as 2019, but the whole COVID situation made it difficult. Fights were getting changed left, right and centre. There was mismatches galore. A lot of bets I made, the fights ended up not happening. You know, it was just a bit of a mess. I was just glad to get through the year and actually be in profit. So hopefully this year, the schedule hopefully isn't going to be affected again. We might still see some mismatches, though. I know that because of, I'm not entirely sure what the situation is in America with restrictions and whatnot, but I guess there's going to be maybe guys that aren't in a position that can take fights as easily as they perhaps could before. So you might still see some kind of lower level guys that historically you wouldn't normally see in the UFC. But I don't know. We'll play it by ear. And that affects odds, guys, because normally when you get guys like that coming into the UFC, they're normally a massive underdog, and it's like, minus 500 favourite. Just no value on the betting front normally. And it just reduces the amount of bets you can look at. So hopefully the UFC gets back to normal with regards to the quality of fighter and quality of matchmaking, and it just gives us more options to look at from a betting standpoint. All of the bets are tracked. Just to remind everyone, there's links to the free trackers below this video. They're all accessible via the website as well, ProMMABetting.com. Everything is fully transparent. we've got a private Discord chat where members will discuss fights coming up, some real good guys in the chat with real knowledge. I like reading the chat. It gives me different ideas, and it's where we provide our live betting tips as well. The chat is frozen during fights, so no one can contribute besides myself, and everyone can see the bets, if any, that are given throughout a fight. So we've got a private Discord channel, both for chat and for live betting tips, and pre-bets are emailed out to members as and when I come across a bet that I like. Packages are all on the website. Compared to how much you're going to earn, it's throughout the year, and like I said, you've got to treat it as like the stock market. You can't expect results week in, week out. There are going to be losing events. I can't win every event, impossible to do so, but I will win over the course of a year. So you've got to go in with a long-term mindset. Obviously there's a monthly pass available that you can take to give you a feel for the service, but 95% of the members have signed up with me for a year, and if you look on the website, it works out at about, I think it's £295 for 12 months. And, you know, if you're betting £50 or £100 per unit, you're going to get your money back really quickly, especially if you can utilise the pre-betting and the live betting service. Once you've recouped your yearly subscription money, then the rest of the money for the rest of the year is profit. We bet on the boxing as well. Boxing schedule is always light at the beginning of the year, especially in the UK. The UK boxing scene doesn't normally start picking up until March, April time. But eventually we get to a point where the boxing season's in full flow, the UFC season's in full flow, Bellator's in full flow, other smaller MMA organisations are in flow that we get odds for, like LFA, which is already starting actually this Friday. So as the year goes on, there's more and more opportunities for betting that become available. It always starts a little bit slow, but the UFC's starting pretty quickly here. I think we've got 7 or 8 shows. There's a week off at the end of February, I think it is, and then the schedule runs through, I think, till the end of March, and I think there's another week off at the moment. I don't know if that'll change then, but as I said, we had that insane spell for the last 6 months of last year where we didn't have a week off because Dana White needed to get the 42 shows he's contracted to do in. Hopefully this year we won't have the same restrictions and it will move along at a bit of a slower pace. I do like having a week or two off every couple of months just to relax a little bit. It's difficult here in the UK because we have to stay up all night for the UFC shows. First 2 UFC shows of this year are actually late afternoon. Start late afternoon and run into the late evening, so it's going to be really nice for us. First card we're going to have to stay up for will be the Conor McGregor card, and then we'll have a run of having to stay up, I expect, all night. Hopefully they've got the TV schedule where it starts a bit earlier again. Towards the end, it went back to the old schedule where the main cards were starting at like 3 a.m. and it's brutal for us guys in Europe because we're up till 5, 6 a.m. and it just affects you the next day, which is a Sunday, meant to be a family day, but comes with the territory. So just glad to be back. We're going to break down the card as always from top to bottom. ProMMABetting.com to look at the packages available. At Pro MMA Betting is the Twitter handle. I will often throw up thoughts on fights throughout the week, so give us a follow on there and hit the subscribe button to this channel. As I say, I'm going to try and be like I was before COVID and regular and getting the predictions out every week basically. So we will start with the first fight on the card. We have Jacob Kilburn versus Austin Lingo at Featherweight. So going to be the first UFC fight of 2021. Austin Lingo, we've seen in the UFC once. He lost a decision to Yusuf Zalal. Just a disclaimer as well, guys. I started tape for these 3 upcoming shows before Christmas. I've done some tape over Christmas and I finished the kind of 3 cards off at the end of last week. So some of this tape I've done literally like 3 weeks ago and I've watched about 35 odd fights I've capped. Pretty much capped most of the fights. There might be 1 or 2 that I haven't bothered with just because of the odds. But generally speaking, I've capped the whole card for all 3 shows. So there's going to be some things I've forgotten because I just can't remember everything. And I don't take notes. So there's going to be a few bits and pieces or oversights that you're probably going to come across and think, oh, why has he not picked up on that? But Obviously, I don't catch everything, so maybe I've just missed it anyway. But there are going to be some things that I've just forgotten just because of the length of time since I taped some of these fights and the amount of tape that I've kind of done over the last 3 weeks. But back to Lingo Kilburn. So we've seen Lingo once in the UFC, lost a decision to Yusuf Zalal, pretty one-sided. Takedown defence in the Yusuf Zalal fight was a big red flag for me. What I did like from Austin Lingo was when they were on the feet, you could see that he applies a lot of pressure, constantly moving forward. Can tell he likes to bang. I mean, you look at his record before his UFC debut, and his last 3 fights lasted a combined 63 seconds, just dusting people really quickly. You have to go back to May 2018 for the last time before the Zalal fight that he'd been past the first round. I haven't actually watched that fight. I've seen some of his quick knockouts, and I've seen the Zalal fight. Kind of gives you a good impression of him and what he's about. He trains out of Fortis MMA, so he's coming out of a good camp. Jacob Kilburn, definitely not as impressive on tape for me. Kilburn, I mean, Lingo, I'm still a little bit on the fence with. I don't have a full idea of where I feel his ceiling is, but I think his ceiling's higher than Jacob Kilburn's. I mean, you can go back and watch Jacob Kilburn on the Contender Series, and you can watch him in his UFC debut. Bobby Moffett and Billy Quarantillo just completely dominate him for the duration of their fights. He gets subbed in both fights in the second round. Both fighters did use grappling heavy attacks on him. Wasn't much striking. They pretty much just took him down when they wanted and dominated him on the mat. You can watch his fights in Island fights. I watched the 2 that are after the Moffett fight, so the 2 that are sandwiched between the Moffett and Quarantillo fight, and I mean, he fought poor opposition, but he knocked them out nasty. Like, we're talking nasty one-punch knockouts. His stand-up isn't particularly good. Definitely didn't impress me. I think it was the fight where he got the KO in the second round. He was getting outstruck handedly in round 1, but he came back and got, as I say, 2 really nasty knockouts. So he's got some power there. I've seen from his Instagram he's been training at ATT, and we've not seen him for over a year. So, you know, he's a young guy, 25 years of age. You know, there is room for improvement there. So for me, this is a pass fight. Lingo's line's kind of been at around the -220 area for a long time. I do favour Lingo here. I do think he's going to win, but I'm not prepared to lay that price on him. I'd need to see a bit more out of him. Like I said, he's got very quick round 1 wins, which it's, besides the guy obviously having power, it's hard to take a lot from them. I'd rather, when I'm trying to assess someone from a betting angle, I would much rather watch them over 3 rounds than watch them win 3 or 4 fights very quickly. It just doesn't tell me a lot about the fighter. You don't see how they deal with adversity. You don't see how they can change up their game plan. You just don't learn anything besides they've obviously got power. So -220 is a no-no for me. I know people were betting the under on this fight. It's been backed all the way down to, I think it's +100 now, the under, which I don't know if it's a great bet now, but I definitely know when guys were getting it at the +150 or better area, it was definitely the play. I mean, even now at +100, it's, you know, you've got 2 guys that bang. Kilburn's been to a decision twice in victory. He's never seen the scorecards when he's lost. And you've got Austin Lingo, who's been to a decision, I think, a couple of times. But besides the Zalal fight, which he lost, before that you had to go back to the Gonzalez fight. His debut and then his 4th pro MMA fight went to decisions. Apart from that, all quick finishes in round 1 until we run into Yusuf Zalal where he lost the decision. So for me, I think the under is the bet on that fight. I haven't bet it just because by the time limits were increased and you could get a decent amount of money down, it had been bet all the way down to where it is roughly now, about +100. So it was a pass for me. But, you know, as I say, pass fight for me. But if you're one of these guys that likes to play every fight, I think personally the under is probably the right play there based on the line value. Next, women's bantamweight fight. Low-level women's MMA starts right off the bat. We've got Sarah Morris taking on Vanessa Melo. Look, I think you're crazy if you're betting Morris here at plus minus 250. She's been bet down a little bit now. She's kind of like minus 230, anywhere between minus 230 and minus 250. Yeah, I think you're nuts if you pay that price on Sarah Morris. I mean, I can see how people will feel she can win this fight, but no way I can lay that juice on low level women's MMA. And Vanessa Melo for me has a path to victory here. Sarah Morris, she's made some improvements. She's changed things up. She now trains at, I think she's at Extreme Couture now. You can definitely see she's made some improvements to her stand up. It's still not great, but there's some improvements there. Grappling is her forte though. She's a decent grappler. She's much more submission over position, but she's very good with transitions, and you have to be really careful with her on the mat. So that in a fight with Ashley Evans-Smith, she caught Ashley Evans-Smith with an armbar from the bottom. If you go back and watch the Jessica Andrade fight, I've not watched it for years, but I remember that she has a rear naked choke locked in on Jessica Andrade right at the end of the fight. So you do have to be careful with her on the mat. She is dangerous with her submissions. Sijara Eubanks was far too much for her, but against a girl who's not quite as sharp on the mat, she had a couple of decent armbar attempts against Sijara Eubanks. So she is opportunistic, and when it's low level MMA, you've got to be very, very careful with opportunistic fighters because they can pull something out of the bag. And there's definitely an opportunity for Sarah to do something like that against someone like Vanessa Melo, who isn't great. Vanessa's going to want this fight standing. I'd say she's got a slight edge on the feet. She can be a little bit of a slow starter, I've noticed, in the UFC. You kind of saw that in the Aldana fight and the Carol Rosa fight. I don't think she's won a round in the UFC, she's had some decent moments, like round 3 against Carol Rosa, she started coming back well. Tracy Cortez first round was fairly competitive, but I think if you check the judges' scorecards, I think she's lost all 9 rounds in the UFC, which just isn't a great look. Now, she's fought decent girls, like Carol Rosa I think is decent, Tracy Cortez is a decent wrestler, and Irene Aldana is solid. So she's not had an easy path so far. This is definitely her most winnable fight to date. I think her takedown defense in open space is actually okay. Now, see, this is where as I mentioned, where I taped this fight ages ago, so I'm just trying to remember. But I remember there was some decent. She stuffed some takedowns in open space, decent enough. But I think Carol Rosa did take her down once in open space, but it was as Melo was going to throw a kick, so she kind of caught her off balance. But generally, her open space takedown defense is decent. I think her weakness is more in the clinch, and she can be controlled in the clinch as well for long periods. I do remember that. So if you're Sarah Morris, the game plan really for me would be to get Melo on the fence where Morris can probably control her. We saw Morris have long spells of control against Jo Dewar. I know Jo Dewar's a smaller girl, but just based on Melo fights I've watched, even pre-UFC, she can be controlled for long periods on the fence. And I think Sarah can probably or potentially get some takedowns on the fence, but if she can't, then at least she's got some periods of control. And on the feet, like I said, I lean Melo, but I'd see it being close on the feet. So I haven't bet Vanessa Melo. I've just held back because she is a turtle. She gets put on her back, she's not getting up. It's the round gone, or if Morris can finish, then obviously the fight's going to be over. But she's never been subbed Melo. She's only been stopped once by KO. So based on these odds, I'm going to pick Vanessa Melo. I'm not sure if Morris can get the fight to the floor. I don't think she can in open space. And while I said that Morris might get some takedowns on the fence, memory is coming back to me now. That is not how she gets takedowns. All of her takedowns are basically a double leg in open space. So I've just got a feeling she's going to struggle to get the takedown here. And on the feet, I think it's going to be close. So I've got to pick the plus 200 girl. I'm still deliberating whether to put some money on it. I might put a little bit on her money line and a little bit on her decision line, because I don't see her finishing Morris here at all. But the same time, it is Vanessa Melo, and it is a value bet. I think there's value there, but it's just frustrating to start 2021 with a value bet on Vanessa Melo that loses. So I don't know where I'm going with it, but in terms of value, for me, it's a no-brainer. If you said to me, gun to my head, I need to bet this fight based on value, I would definitely take Vanessa Melo. I think Morris should be a much shorter favourite, but it's so low level. And it's Vanessa Melo. It's just tough to be confident. But I'm picking Melo. So my first underdog pick of 2021 is Vanessa Melo. Next, in the men's welterweight division, we've got Ramazan Emeev taking on David Zawada. So Emeev's sitting at around, I think it's minus 250. Let's check that's not changed. Oh, he's a bit wider, in fact, kind of getting up to minus 270, minus 280. Favourite here. Look, Emeev is a solid fighter, but I just don't think his seeding is particularly high. It's pretty low volume on the feet. He just doesn't excel anywhere. I mean, he's decent on the feet, but he's pretty low volume. He's mixing takedowns. He's, everything about his game is solid, but it's just nowhere that excels. He's not really a finisher. You look at his record; he's only got 3 KO wins from 19 wins. He's got 7 submission wins, 9 decisions. But you look at his UFC record, and he's had 4 wins in the UFC, and they're all by a decision. I mean, he did hurt Sam Alvey at one point in their fight, but that was the fight where Alvey, I think he took it on short notice, and he had to cut a hell of a lot of weight, and he just, looked even more out of sorts than he normally does. He did hurt Stefan Sekulic at one point, but Sekulic recovered and survived the fight. There's just something missing from his game. He just doesn't excel anywhere for me. He's a bit low volume. You saw in the Rocco fight, struggled with the calf kicks of Rocco Martin and lost a striking match over 3 rounds. So, I do favour him here, but I'm not betting him because I just don't think he's going to finish. I feel like you're laying almost minus 300 on him winning a decision. When I'm laying juice on someone, and when I say juice, I'm kind of talking over minus 200 generally. I want to be betting on someone who I feel can at least finish the fight, and I think here you're betting on him winning the decision. David Zawada isn't great, but he's a game guy. His fight IQ is questionable though. Danny Roberts' fight. If I'd bet on Zawada in that fight, I would have been pulling my hair out. The Jingliang fight, he started well in that fight, but then the wheels just started to come off. I think he started to slow down in the fight. So this is another one I taped over Christmas, and I'm sure though he was slowing down in. The Danny Roberts fight was very high paced, and I'm sure he was slowing down in that, but it was a high paced fight. But against Jingliang Li, I'm sure he started well, but he just started to slow down in that fight as well. But Emeev isn't someone that fights at a high pace, so he, as long as Zawada doesn't fight like a madman himself and paces himself to some degree, then he should be okay over 3 rounds here. And then he's coming off that win over Nurmagomedov, where he got taken down and managed to catch a triangle choke. It's over a year ago now since we've seen him. So, I can understand why people are betting Zawada here. I know someone that's on him, but I'm picking Emeev still here. I just think Emeev's going to win a decision. But I think you have to be very careful if you're betting Emeev as a favourite. I think he's one of these fighters that there's still a little bit of hype around him. I'm not really sure why. He's not living up to where perhaps a lot of guys thought he was going to go. And I think he's very likely to be someone that's going to burn bettors as a decent sized favourite. So I definitely wouldn't lay the juice on him here, although I do think he'll win the fight. I think decision is sitting at about even money. I'd want plus money really, even though I don't think he finishes. It's still a welterweight fight. They're fairly large guys in there, and so he did go the distance with Danny. Got stopped by Lee in the 3rd round. I don't think he stops Zawada here. I think it goes to a decision. So look, if you really want to bet the fight, then I think and you really like Emeev here, I think the sensible option is to take him by decision. But it's just a pass fight for me, and I definitely wouldn't put him in my parlays. And I can't fault anyone if they're having a go at Zawada here, but I just think Emeev's just going to be a step ahead in every department. And as I said, that fight IQ against Danny Roberts was very suspect, and I'm just trying to think. I'm sure it was a bit suspect in the Lee fight as well. I'm sure he was doing okay on the feet, and did he start going for takedowns? I'm sure he did, but I could be off there because I did take this one over 2 weeks ago. But I'm sure in the Lee fight as well, I was questioning his fight IQ. So it's just hard for me to trust someone like that. And there obviously is the argument, well, he's +2, 2.5. Do you really need to trust him? And I understand that as well, but I just think Emeev's going to be a step above in every area for him, and I think he'll probably win a decision. But I think it's going to be another fight where he doesn't run away with it. It's, fairly competitive. But I definitely think he's going to burn Bettors at some point as a decent sized favourite, Emeev. So I'd tread carefully if you are looking to bet him. They're being kind to us, this UFC card. So we've already got the low-level women's MMA fight. Now we've got the low-level men's heavyweight fight. Another one of my favourites. But to be fair, I'm actually quite looking forward to this one because Carlos Felipe has actually turned out to be quite an entertaining guy. Bit of a novelty in the heavyweight division in that he's like a high-volume boxer. You don't tend to see it too much in the heavyweight ranks, but that's kind of the style that he's exhibiting. Basically, if you watch both his UFC fights, Sergej Spivak got a decision against him. Spivak close first couple of rounds on the feet, and then Spivak got the grappling going in the third round. Felipe started to slow down a little bit. Yorgan De Castro, Felipe just beat him up on the feet basically. High volume. And De Castro didn't like it at the end of the day. Third round, he didn't want any part of it. Kept putting Felipe on the fence. You could see Felipe was a bit tired in that fight as well, but De Castro was more tired. So yeah, high volume boxer at heavyweight. It's quite interesting. I'm not sure how much power he's got. Both fights have gone to a decision. He's landed some big shots, but I don't think he's really looked like he's hurt anyone. So that's potentially going to be a problem for him at heavyweight because the longer you're in that octagon as a heavyweight, the more chance you've got of being knocked out. And if you can't put people away, you can't be going 3 rounds every fight at heavyweight. You're just going to get knocked out if you're not putting people away, even if you're the superior fighter, because things just change one punch in the heavyweight division more so than any other division. So that's a potential issue for him. And he does have that high volume approach as well. And cardio is something to bear in mind. But Justin Tafa is very, very raw. He's only had 5 MMA fights. He's never been... Well, he's been into round 2 on his debut. He went mid-round 2. And his third fight, he went 30 seconds into round 2. But, that's the furthest he's been in the UFC. He's had 2 fights. He's 1-1. Well, we all probably remember the knockout loss to Castro. Brutal knockout loss. And then he's coming off a quick win over one Adam. So it'd be interesting. I mean, if this fight does go deep, it'd be interesting how Tafa's cardio holds up over 3 rounds against someone like Felipe, who's going to be bringing pace and volume. So it's a tough fight to call. I mean, the value's kind of been sucked out of it, in my opinion, on all fronts. Felipe's sitting at about -190. Can't really bet that at heavyweight at low level, and we don't really have a full picture on Tafa either. The over is set at 1.5, but it's at like almost -200. So again, value's gone on there. I'm just not seeing any value there. I did get a little bit on Felipe when he was about -150. I'm not sure how I feel about it, to be completely honest, because Tafa is a bit of an unknown. He's going to be dangerous early. Wouldn't be shocked if he knocked Felipe out early. But I think the longer it goes, the more it probably favours Felipe with the volume approach. And it'll be interesting to see how Tafa looks after the first round or halfway through the second round if, Felipe's fighting his normal fight and pushing the pace. So I'm going to pick Felipe. As I said, though, I just don't think there's much value on the lines. But I quite like how he fights at heavyweight, and I think he can have some, mild success at the lower ranks of the UFC heavyweight division with his style. So I'll pick Felipe, but I just don't feel there's any value on him or Tafa or the over. Let me just quickly look at knockout. Tafa by KO is plus 250. That's not bad. Look, that's not bad. I mean, I can't see him winning the decision. So if you like Tafa, then I don't think plus 250 on the KO is a bad bet at all. Felipe wins by decision, plus 225. I don't know, because I just don't know how Tafa's going to look second half of this fight. If I keep saying Felipe's had the fight he wants, he might just fold and run out of gas. So, but I think if you like Tafa, I think decision KO is not a bad bet there. But generally, with the way the lines are, I think otherwise not really much value. Next fight on the card, we've got Yanan taking on Joselyne Edwards. So this is a late notice fight. Wu was meant to fight Betch Cohair. Joselyne's coming as a late replacement. Joselyne Edwards, she is out of... I can't work out if she trains full-time out of King's MMA. I don't think she does. I think she might be at some kind of affiliate of King's. But she has spent time at the proper King's camp, because there's pictures on her Instagram training with Sabina Mazo and in shots with like the group, and you've got Rafael Cordero in the picture and etc. There's some pictures of her as well when she was at the PI some point last year training with the Shevchenko sisters. So she looks like she's been getting in some quality training. She's a young girl. I think she's 24 years of age. Taking this on short notice. But I quite like her. She is a bit raw when you watch tape, but she's an athletic girl. She's physically strong. I watched her fight with Sarah Alpar. It was a 5-round fight. You've basically got wrestled in the fight. Sarah Alpar is not a bad wrestler, and you could see that Joselyne was pretty raw in that fight. But you could also see the kind of potential upside to her. Decent on the feet. She's got some power. Like I said, pretty athletic, pretty strong physically. So I could definitely see some upside to her. I mean, last fight's available, but it's just a complete one-sided beatdown against someone that shouldn't have been in the ring with her. So, I mean, we haven't really seen her properly for over 2 years, because the Alpar fight was back in November 2018. Young girl, I think she's 25 now. So the Alpar fight, she was, 22, 23. The training she's been getting in, you've got to think in the last couple of years she's made some improvements. If she hasn't and she's the same version, then, you might as well... I think she trains full time. You might as well go and do something else. If you're not making improvements at that young of an age, been training with the kind of people you've been training with in 2 years' time, what's the point? So I'm interested to see her upside and how she looks here, because I think she's going to look better. And I think she's going to get the fight she wants against Yanan Wu. I think she's going to get the stand-up fight. Takedown defense and grappling did look a bit of a liability against Alpar. She got up a lot just through sheer physical strength, but I think she will get the fight she wants here against Yanan. We've seen Yanan just stand in the UFC. Yanan's only 24 herself. We haven't seen Yanan in well over a year, so there is potential that she could have improved herself as well, being such a young girl. So there's potential upside on both of them here, but she hasn't looked great in the UFC. Gina Mazzani fight, but difficult fight. Gina came in with a grappling heavy approach. She got the win over Lauren Muller. She ended up on her back but pulled out the armbar, and then she's coming off that loss to Mizuki in a way, which I don't think that should have been a split decision. From memory, she clearly lost the first couple of rounds to me. I think she kind of woke up a bit in the third round, but she got a bit bullied in that fight by Mizuki in a way, which isn't a great look. Mizuki's not a big girl. I remember people were on Yanan in that fight because of the size difference, and it just didn't play out at all, which makes me wonder about her physicality. And Joselyne Edwards is someone that does seem pretty physical. So we are a little bit blind here. Not seen really Joselyne in over 2 years. We've not seen Yanan Wu in for almost 18 months. So there could be an upside to both of them. Joselyne Edwards opened plus 200, I think she opened up at, which for me was just nuts. It held at plus 170, which is where I managed to get the line. It's been bet down there. It's creeping down there towards an even money line, which I think is accurate. I think personally it should be an even money fight. So, but I'm picking Edwards. She's the underdog still. I've sent this out to members when the line was better than it currently is. I'd probably pass now. Now she's like, I don't know, like plus 110. Well, it wouldn't be as appealing now for me, certainly, to bet. But I think the upside's there, and I'm taking a gamble on improvements and that she's going to look good here. So I'm going to go with Edwards. Women's MMA likely to be a decision, but no need to play any props here when we've got a good line on the money line. So for me, Joselyne Edwards, probably by decision, as I said. Next, men's welterweight division. Last fight before we get to the main card. We've got Phil Hawes taking on Nassourdine Imavov. So Phil Hawes, 32 years of age. I think back when we first saw him on the Contender Series, he was at Jackson Wink, but he's at Sanford now, so with Henry Hooft and the guys. So if you go back, he was on the Contender Series back in 2017 against Julian Marquez. Got brutally knocked out in that fight. He basically gassed after the first round. He was trying to get his wrestling going. From memory, he got Marquez down a few times, but Marquez kept getting back to his feet. And Marquez is a big guy. It just wore on. It wore on Hawes, and he got brutally knocked out in the second round. He kind of went into Bellator and Brave, put a couple of wins together. Then he got back into the Contender Series, got a win against Bestayev back in September. Also, just to note as well, before he was on the Contender Series, he was on the Ultimate Fighter where he lost a decision to Andrew Sanchez. Just couldn't get his wrestling going in that fight. Sanchez was defending the takedowns and just outstruck him basically. But quick win over Bestayev, and then literally a month later, he was in at UFC 254 against Jacob Malcolm, who had a bit of hype being Robert Whittaker's training partner, and he just demolished him in 18 seconds. So the unknowns here with Hawes are, you look at his record, he's 9-2. He's never seen a decision in a win or in a loss. He's lost against Louis Taylor. He got guillotined in that fight back in 2016. And Marquez, as I've said, he got knocked out badly on the Contender Series. Did go to a decision against Andrew Sanchez. It was 2 5-minute rounds, and he lost the decision there. But I mean, the guy's just not been, he's never seen round 3. And, since the Marquez fight, which was basically 3.5 years ago, he's not been past round 1. So this is the one. I mean, there's a clear pattern of what could happen here with this fight. And, Hawes is very, very dangerous in round 1. I wonder what improvements he's made. Now he's at Sanford. Going the wrestling route was clearly affecting his cardio. I mean, it's hard to say with any confidence that he now stands as opposed to wrestling because his fights are over too short. But I just wonder if he's made that change up and he's kind of turned himself into a striker. The wrestling exchanges for someone so muscular, maybe he's decided that they just drain his tank too much and he's better off standing. I don't know. I really want to see him stretched in a fight to just see what he's about, but I can't. I mean, he's been bet down a lot here. He was, let's see the current line. He's come down a lot. He's like minus 135 or so now. When I've done tape on this fight, I think he was like minus 200, maybe even higher. Let me just check. And it's saying he was minus 80 on best fight odds back after Christmas, but I thought he was higher than that. I'm sure he was like minus 200. But the money's either way. Money's definitely coming on Imavov, and I can understand why. I did think about betting Imavov, but I just couldn't get past what happens in round 1. Imavov made his UFC debut on the I was going to say the Contender Series. It wasn't the Contender Series. He was meant to make his debut on the Contender Series, but he ended up making his debut back in October against Jordan Williams, who actually replaced him on the Contender Series. Hence why Jordan Williams got into the UFC. He had a good, entertaining fight with Jordan Williams. Jordan Williams just really slowed down in that fight, and Imavov just took over. longer the fight went. I think he won all 3 rounds anyway. He looks decent. He looks decent. He had some good front choke attempts against Jordan Williams when Williams would attempt to wrestle. I do recall that on a couple of occasions. He does look open for a counter though. This is again one that I taped a few weeks ago, but I do remember him looking like he could get caught with a big shot, and that was one of the things that made me nervous because I did think about betting him, but I ended up deciding I'll just live bet the fight, see if he survives round 1, see how Hawes is looking. Let's see how sharp the books are on that one, because if Hawes wins round 1, how are they going to line it? I've noticed that they have been a bit sharper on fighters that gas and historically don't do so well past round 1 lately. So it'd be interesting to see how they line it post round 1 if Hawes wins the first round. But yeah, I mean, now I just don't see the value on the line now. I think the value was with Imavov, even though I passed, but now I think it's one where it's a 50-50. I think Hawes could definitely blow him away early, or Imavov could take him out down the stretch. Imavov inside the distance. Let's see what that pays, because that could be interesting. Wow, Imavov by a KO is like plus 450. That seems a little bit crazy to me. He's only got 3 KO win. What's inside the distance, just to cover yourself? Just find the odds. Imavov inside the distance plus 275. I still don't think that's bad, I mean, Hawes has never been to a decision in victory or defeat. It's not a bad line. Not a bad line. I mean, when you look at Imavov as well, he's had 11 fights. He's seen a decision 3 times, and one of them was his last fight against Jordan Williams, where he had Williams in trouble in that fight. Williams showed how tough he was to survive. I think I live betted Imavov inside the distance after the 2nd round, I think. So I think that's an interesting line there. I don't see any value on the money line now, because I think this fight is a 50-50. But I think Imavov inside the distance is very interesting at that price. So I think if I was going to play this fight, I'd be playing Imavov inside the distance. I think that's where the value lies on that particular fight. First fight on the main card, we've got Duško Todorović taking on Punahele Soriano. I took a small bet on Soriano blind here at plus 145 when the lines first came out. After tape, I'm a little bit indifferent. Kind of wish I'd just passed on the fight. Now, I'm not overly sold on Duško. Hasn't particularly impressed me. I mean, he's 10-0. He's a young guy. 9 finishes from 10 fights. So he's only been to a decision once. That was on the Contender Series against Teddy Ash. I did see the Pereira fight. Kind of walked Pereira down, put him away. It was I put middleweight for Pereira there. Duško is a middleweight. But on the Contender Series, I mean, with Teddy Ash, he just clinched him for 3 rounds basically, and then it's kind of done the same against Townsend as well. I mean, he let his hands go a bit against Townsend, landed some big shots. Townsend showed that he's got an insane chin. Eventually took him down in the 2nd round and mounted him, and the ref stopped the fight. But yeah, I'm just, he's a bit of a liability on the feet for me when he's not in close and got the clinch. He's very hittable, but he does bring a hard pace. I'm just trying to recollect. I think he did look a bit tired against Teddy Ash, and there was moments where Ash had some success in that fight, and the style he fights at is just, it is very cardio consuming. But the worry with Soriano is his cardio. He's only been to a decision once. That was on the Contender Series, much like Duško against Jamie Pickett, where he utilised his wrestling. Soriano, I think he's an All-American. He's got a credentialed wrestling background, and I think he done well on the feet with Pickett in round 1. He's clearly got power. He's a southpaw. He cracks very hard, but he started to slow down and went to his wrestling. against Oscar Piachotta. Just blew him away. Hurt him early. Piachotta never recovered and he got put away. But, there was signs in that fight that the kind of gas tank issue was starting to rear its head a little bit. So that is definitely a concern with Soriano, is if he doesn't put Duško away here early, how is this fight going to look? And I've not listened to the interview, but I did see that he'd been saying that in 2020 he'd had some concussion issues. I think he'd had some kind of hip surgery as well, which was quite a serious hip surgery. So, those things, they don't sit well with me, I've got to say. He's definitely dangerous early, but I've just got a feeling if he doesn't put him away, I know he's got the wrestling background, and, Duško's takedown defence is a bit of an unknown here, but I just wonder if the pace Duško can keep the fight at, as long as he can get back to his feet. If he's taken down, might just be too much for Soriano. But it's a tough fight for me to call. I wouldn't bet Duško at his current price, like -155. Like I said, I'm just not sure where his ceiling is. He hasn't really impressed me. So I would pass, honestly, at the current prices. I would pass. Like I said, I've got a little bit on Soriano at +145, but kind of wish I'd passed on it now, to be completely honest. I might even reduce. I'm not sure, but I don't have a strong read on that fight. Over 1.5 rounds is set at minus. It's basically the same as Duško's money line. So, if you feel strongly about Duško here, then I don't think the over is a terrible bet. I'm not sure Duško puts him away the first half of the fight, if he does put him away. So over, but, if you think Soriano's got a decent chance and it could well end under, Soriano's definitely got power in that left hand. It's definitely cracks. So, yeah, it's a fight for me. I just don't really see any. I've got no strong feelings on it. I don't really see any particularly strong value on the current line. So, pass fight for me, but I pick Soriano just because he's the underdog and I have got a little bit of money on him, but it's definitely not a confident pick, and I definitely have concerns if the fight goes past round one, how it's going to look for Soriano. Next fight, we've got Buckley, Joaquin Buckley taking on Alessio di Chirico. So, this fight got put together on fairly short notice. Buckley's clearly, the UFC know what they're doing here. They're trying to build up a bit more Buckley hype. Now, they're not silly. Buckley's never going to be the middleweight champion, but they're living off of the highlight reel finish he had 2 fights ago when he took on Impa, and he's coming off another KO win in November against Jordan Wright, and they're giving him another winnable fight here. They know what they're doing, or at least they think they do. And look, he probably does win here. Chirico hasn't looked particularly good in the UFC. He's low volume. Coming off a loss to Zach Cummins, just not the best look. Outstruck by Zach Cummins. Before that, Muradov beat him. He came on strong against Muradov, but that was because Muradov took it on short notice and he really gassed in the 3rd round. And then before that, the Kevin Holland fight was quite controversial. It was quite competitive, but I think now I would, Kevin Holland would be a big favourite, and I think he'd win the fight quite comprehensively. Now I think he's come on a lot. And he got a win over Julian Marquez. Now, I haven't watched it recently, but I remember it was a very controversial win. And I remember at the time, I'm pretty sure I thought Marquez had won that fight. He lost to Eric Spicely, and he got that win over Olawale Bambossi, or however you say his name, with the knee. But it was a very dull fight up until the knockout. So, it's just, split decision win over Gareth McClellan, who was terrible. I haven't watched that fight for ages either. I don't think it was a split decision in my view, but I haven't watched it for ages, so I could be wrong there. But yeah, he's just not great, Chirico. And Buckley, not 100% convinced his chin is granite. It's a bit of a concern with the way he fights because he is very aggressive. But even though he fights at a really high pace, he can maintain it for 3 rounds. He doesn't slow down. He's got real good cardio for someone that fights the way he does, who's a middleweight fighter. So I personally think he's going to win this fight. I think his volume's going to be too much. He's got to be careful he doesn't get caught by a big counter, but I just think his work rate will be too much for Chirico. He'll land the more eye-catching, impactful shots, and I think Chirico is KO or bust here personally. So I'm going to pick Buckley. If you're betting the over in that, it's going to be a sweat because Buckley does throw hard, and there's probably going to be points where he might rock Chirico, and Chirico did get hurt quite badly against that Cummins, although he's never been stopped. So he is durable. So my gut says it's probably going to go 3 rounds, but Buckley's going to win a decision here. There's no value. He's sitting at like minus 250-ish, minus 260. People are probably going to parlay him up. And this is probably Chirico's last. Well, it's got to be his last shot here. I'm sure he'll be cut if he doesn't get a victory here. But I'm going to go with Buckley to get the W. Next fight, we have the return of Santiago Ponzinibbio taking on Jingliang. Ponzinibbio has been out for 2 years. He's a minus 280 favourite. Look, if we get the same Ponzinibbio that we had a couple of years ago, it's highly likely he's going to look a minus 280 favourite here. And if he'd fought a couple of months ago and won that fight against Neil Magny, I'd be putting him in some sort of parlay here, or maybe even betting him straight. But now, 2 years is a long time. He's 34 years of age now. He's had some serious injuries. Trying to remember what they were now, but they weren't. I think he did have a nasty staph infection, but the actual injuries he had, I can't remember what they were, but they sounded pretty serious. Have a look on Google and you'll see, guys. And look, he probably comes out here and looks the same fighter, but I've just got a general rule of thumb. Like, I don't always stick to it, but a general rule of thumb about betting guys that are coming back from long layoffs. And he, as I say, he's 34. It's not like he's a youngster. He's probably not going to come back and look better. We're probably going to get at best the same version of him. And the other thing as well, betting someone coming back from a layoff, if the line's decent and attractive, but he's basically minus 300 here. The line's not even attractive. So from a betting angle, for me, this fight's just a pass. I think his style's all wrong for Lee, the way he pressure fights, the power he brings. But who knows how he's going to look. Lee, we haven't seen him since March last year when he lost to Neil Magny. So I'm going to pick Ponzinibbio, but disclaimer, I'm not touching the fight at all from a betting angle. Besides one bet that I did like, that the value is now gone, is the over 1.5 rounds. I thought it was going to be set at 2.5. I do quite like the over being set at 1.5 here. Lee's never been finished. But he's lost by submission once, but he's never actually been KO'd. I know he's been dropped a few times, but he's got a bit of a blockhead. He's tough to put away. Ponzinibbio, the danger is Ponzinibbio comes out trying to prove a point, and he's really, really aggressive here. I'm hoping we're going to get a Ponzinibbio that comes out that's going to be looking to find his feet, get back into his rhythm, take things a little bit slow. Worried maybe a little bit about gassing out potentially if he doesn't get the quick finish, and in the back of his mind he's going to know Lee's never been stopped. And Ponzinibbio, as long as Ponzinibbio is as good as he was before, he should be a level above Lee, so I'm not too worried about Lee knocking Ponzinibbio out. And as I say, Ponzinibbio does crack, but Lee's always shown to have a granite chin. So I personally saw this as more like it goes over, like kind of 7 times out of 10 for me, which is like a minus 225. And we got the line at about minus 180. So I felt there was some value there in that over. So So the over was where the value lied there for me. Betting Ponzinibbio, parlaying him up, not my style here with the layoff and the question marks. But I'm still going to pick Ponzinibbio, but I'm too wary of the layoff and the injuries and his age to be betting him here. Co-main event is actually Carlos Condit, Matt Brown. That is crazy in 2021. But look, Matt Brown, you could see in his last fight, he still looked dangerous. He had some moments against Baeza, but you could see the reflexes had gone a bit and he looked defensively porous. It's definitely a fighter on his way out. He'd always had a very good chin, Matt Brown, but he started to get knocked out towards the end of his career. Obviously, the Baeza fight, his last fight, and he got knocked out. Donald Cerrone, I mean, we're going back a long way now, but Donald Cerrone knocked him out with a head kick. It probably would have knocked most people out, to be fair. It was a flush head kick. And some question marks around Matt Brown's body as well. And I think it was before the Cerrone fight, Matt Brown, because I remember I bet Cerrone in that fight. And one of the things that kind of swayed me was Matt Brown was talking about concussion issues. It's always a worry when fighters are talking about concussion issues and they carry on fighting. Carlos Condit is, he's past his best as well, Carlos Condit. He's got a nice win over Court McGee, kind of got a nice fight there where he could kickbox from long range. He dropped Court McGee towards the end of the first round. He switched stances well in the fight. I just wonder what Carlos Condit's got left when he's dragged into the trenches, which Matt Brown's going to try and do. Historically, Condit's been extremely durable. He's never been KO'd. The Tyron Woodley one was a knee injury off a leg kick. So Matt Brown's going to have to, for Matt Brown to win this fight, I think he probably needs to knock him out, and he's going to have to do something that no one's ever done, basically, which isn't impossible due to Carlos Condit being past his best. He's getting up there himself, but he definitely looks the fresher of the two, no doubt about it. The Court McGee fight, while it, didn't blow me away, it was a nice win for Carlos Condit. So I have to go with Carlos Condit here. I would have bet Condit if I know some people got Condit at like minus 110. I don't recall if I ever saw that, but by the time I got to tape, he was minus 160. I just couldn't bring myself to bet Carlos Condit as a minus 160 favourite in 2021, even though it's against Matt Brown. Matt Brown, for me, even though, as I said, the reflexes are clearly going, defence gone, chin is now a question mark. He's still dangerous on the offensive, but I think to win it, he's going to have to put Carlos away. And then, like I said, no one's managed to do that. But, how's Carlos going to react if he's dragged into a war? Is he going to be game for that? He always has been, but it's just when you get to that stage of your career, how much do you really want it? Matt Brown's the kind of guy that's, I think even though he's shot, he's the kind of guy that will still go down fighting. You saw that in the Baeza fight. He's got that kind of psychotic kind of, and I mean that with all due respect, like that's just that fighting mentality. And I think Carlos Condit is probably someone that's got it as well. So you're probably going to find that this could be a really entertaining fight. And the UFC have been pretty smart with putting it as a co-main event because you're probably going to get guaranteed violence. But, the one thing I did take from the last fight is Matt Brown still has that killer instinct and he will still go out there to kill. Whereas Carlos Condit, it's a bit more of a measured approach. It was smart, don't get me wrong. It is smart, but he's going to get a war here from Matt Brown. So I wonder how he reacts. But I am picking Carlos Condit, but I can't bet him at minus 160. I would have taken him at minus 110. Maybe even up to minus 130. I might have even taken him, but I can't do it. I try not to bet on shot fighters, and shot fighter versus shot fighter doesn't happen too often. But even so, I'm still avoiding this fight. Next, main event, and I've actually got a full disclaimer. I've actually still not done tape on this fight, guys. I left it just because it was going to be one that I was going to have to put a bit of time into, and I've got a good feel for both fighters, and looking at the lines, I wasn't confident I was going to have a lean either way, so I do still need to tape this fight. So I will put up my final prediction once I've done tape on it. I'm probably going to look at it tomorrow, so I'll probably leave it blank for now, but it is one that I do need to look at, because there is some stuff here that off of memory I can't recall. Like I'm pretty sure Max can switch his stances up, so that could be interesting, especially when Calvin does a lot of the work behind his jab. How's that going to be effective if Max is southpaw? And there's also the factor of, can Max mix in leg kicks? I just need to see how often he's used leg kicks recently. Is that part of his repertoire that he can bring into play here? There's just some stuff that I need to go over. So yeah, I wanted to get the podcast out today, but that is actually one fight that I've not done yet. So I will put up my final prediction for that fight. But I mean, looking at the lines, I'm not seeing any money. I still have some question marks about Max. I don't like the amount of punishment he's taken. I know that he's coming off the 2 Volkanovski fights where they weren't too bad in terms of punishment. The first fight was a lot of leg kicks. The last fight was controversial. I did think he lost that fight. I've only watched it the once live, and I did think he won the first 2 rounds, and then I thought he kind of gave away the last 3 rounds. But that is the good thing. He didn't take too much damage in either of them fights. So, but this is the kind of fight where he's going to have to take shots. So I'm going to have a look at this one, as I say, probably tomorrow. So I'll put my thoughts up about, I won't put thoughts about how I think the fight's going to play out, but I'll put who I think is going to win. And I will just add whether I feel there's any value on the line or not. As I said, at the moment for me, it feels like a pass fight, but that's why I do tape, because sometimes my memory and gut aren't aligned, and I come away from tape thinking, well, actually that's a bet, so I do need to look at it. So I'm going to do that one tomorrow, so I will come back to you. And also, just in case some people aren't aware, the Omari Akhmedov Tom Breeze fight got moved to the Wednesday card. That's why I haven't broken it down on this card, guys. So that wraps up the card. Good luck with your bets, guys. I'll probably do the next podcast for the Wednesday card on Monday. As I said, I have taped it already. I've done the Conor McGregor card as well. I've taped that. I'm actually on the 6th of February card now, which I should have done by the end of the week. So I'm trying to keep a month ahead. So good luck with your picks. Let's make some money. Let's take some money from the bookies to start the year. Always a nice way to start the year with a nice win. So good luck, everybody. And I'll be back in a few days.